Good morning, everyone. How are you? We're just waiting for a few minutes till right at the top of the start time, which would be 10:30 a.m. Hope everybody's doing well. Don't know where you're living. I live here in West Kelowna, and I was just looking out the window a few moments ago, and I saw some snowflakes coming down. So it's not something I'm used to seeing, on April 10th. But as we know, right, winter can still come and go when you live in the mountains. Just wanted to go through a couple of things as we get started here. We're going to be using the chat feature, and I see some of you are already familiar with it. So if you haven't used a chat before inside a Zoom, you simply can just wiggle your mouse if you're on a PC of some kind or a Mac, and then you'll see a bar that'll come up, and somewhere on there it'll say chat, or you can go to the three dots. And we'll be communicating through this chat. And the one thing that I want you to all know is that the chat is private, which means it is only a message to ourselves and our panel that are working behind the scenes. So you don't have to worry if you have a personal question. So we'll be able to throw questions back and forth. I can see already lots of communications going on. I want to say good morning to Gwen and Brenda and Maria and Heather and Kelly and Shannon and Vivian and John and Keith and lots of people coming in at the moment here. And I see a hand is also up. That's Maria. Yeah. Maria, you have a question. Do you want to try going in the chat if you'd like to? And we'll be able to talk in the chat. Like I say, I have it currently prioritized. So Bernard, if you want to reach out to Maria. Oh, there she is. Yeah, thank you very much. See lots of people coming in. So if you have an iPad, and if you're not used to Zoom, but I think most people are now, but if you have an iPad or a tablet, or you're on your phone of any kind, you can just tap the screen and that same bar will come up, and you just simply again hit the chat feature. So we're going to be going through a lot of things today at a relatively quick pace, because taxes and retirement is not a simple subject, as you can imagine. So it'll involve a case study. But if you're here to learn about how do you maximize your retirement, and how do you maximize, more importantly, your retirement income, because it isn't always about what you make. I mean, it is important, but it is also very much about how much you keep. And that is really the strategy about retirement planning, particularly through all of the years that you will be alive. And we call it your retirement paycheck. So we're going to be spending a lot of time on learning how do you maximize your retirement paycheck and reduce the risks along the way. So we'll get started here in about a minute, and we'll be able to go live. So once again, thank you very much for coming. Oh, I see a lot more coming in. John, yeah. Vicky, thank you very much for joining us. Okay. Wow, lots. It's going quickly. I was told we're expecting up to 100 people today. So I'm not sure everybody will join in. Some may be able to join in a bit later as we go along. But again, I hope everybody's doing well. I personally went for a quick walk this morning. As I went outside, I turned around and put on more clothes. So I don't know if any of you went for a walk this morning and had the same experience, but I was surprised, I can tell you that. Hey, yeah, David's here too as well. Nice to see you. Thank you for joining in on the chat. Again, we'll have lots of communication through the chat. There will be a lot of opportunity for you to have questions as well, and that will be the place to go. If the questions themselves are simple and that we can cover them during the webinar, we will. And if not, we'll collect them, and at the very end, we'll be able to answer some of these questions a little bit more in depth. Right? Thank you. I'm just going to now turn on my video, and we'll get started. Right. So good morning, everybody. Nice to see you. As you can see, we're still working from home. 1 year ago, we all were learning how to use Zoom, and I think everybody has become much more communicable with the Zoom and Teams. But I wanted to welcome you this morning. We try to do a lot of educational work around the community and have for many years. So I'll just get started as we go, but I'm going to introduce you to not only myself, but also the team that are on board today. My name is Rod Gibbings. I'm a certified financial planner. I've been working in the Okanagan area for over 27 years. I've had the benefit of working with some really wonderful people and continue to work with them. And what we found is that we really are specializing in what we call the pre-retiree or the retiree network. And specifically, that usually comes down to family groups, professionals, and also, corporate people. So we wanted business owners, etc. But one of the things we're most proud of is that we've been nominated as the Financial Planner of the Year every year that it's been able to be awarded, which started in 2015. And I think the reason for that is because clearly we're just passionate. We're passionate about the outcomes of our clients. We want to make sure we get to know them as deeply as we can, well beyond a rate of return, and we want to answer the questions that are very prudent and very important to them. Bernard is on the line today, so if you're in the chat, you can say hello to Bernard. Maybe Bernard, if you want to just quickly say hello, and just to everybody, you'll be able to see his answers to you or questions to you. He can also talk with you individually, which I see that he's doing at the same time. What we'll also be doing is for those questions that are a little bit longer or more in-depth in nature, we have a calendar link that we'll be able to throw in, and we have 30-minute time slots sort of booked all around our calendar over the next month that you could pop in, and whether you have a 10-minute question or a 30-minute or maybe even an hour, there is no cost or obligation for any of these. What's important is that you get the answers that you're looking for. Julie, who you won't be able to interact with, is also on the line, but she's making sure that the technology is working. So let's get started. In our agenda today, we're going to be focusing on some very specific things. We're going to start off by looking at what are the core factors that help in a successful retirement plan. Things that maybe some people don't think of, but things that are incredibly important for the success. We're also going to talk about something that we call the law of averages and why it doesn't work and why you need to know about it. Then we'll be looking and going through a case study about very distinct strategies and understanding what a tax-effective retirement paycheck looks like. And then we're going to show you what our approach is and how we make sure that this works for our clients. All right? So what does peace of mind look like for you in retirement? Well, you know what? Let me ask you. We're going to do a quick poll. Now, the polling feature, which is in Zoom, isn't working, but let's call it this way. So let's look at what does peace of mind look like for you in retirement. Number one, a stable retirement paycheck that supports your lifestyle. Or is it number two, leave an estate for your children or grandchildren? Or is it number three, blow it all and leave no estate? Tell you what, why don't you jump into the chat right now and quickly answer those questions. And let's see, I'll give you about 30 seconds here and just type 1, 2, or 3, and let's see if we can come up with a consensus. Awesome. I am seeing some blow it all and leave no estate. Looks like the lead at the moment is number one. I can see a stable retirement paycheck, right? That supports my lifestyle. All right, just another 5 seconds. Looking good. Yeah, that's the winner. Number one, a stable retirement paycheck that supports my lifestyle. Okay, well, let me speak to that then, very, very importantly. And I think when we are looking at this, one of the most important aspects to understand is that people are living a lot longer. So one of the greatest risks that people have to retirement, of course, is that they're enjoying much longer retirements than they ever have in history. As we know, as we've been going through this pandemic, to give you an example of what's happening with longevity, is the magnificent technology leap that's happening in medicine. And to give you an example, of course, we know that normal vaccines take up to 2 years typically before one of them might hit the market. And in this case, the very first one reached approval in 7 to 8 months. And that was really due to, of course, concerted effort, but also because of the technology advancements today. And the science behind a lot of these vaccines is actually going to be utilized for a lot of things before that haven't been able to be easily cured or prevented for people, particularly in the autoimmune area. So if we look back to 2015, the average male then was living to age 83 and the average female was 86. So, and if you're married, at least one of the couples one of people in the couple were going to live to about age 90, which is a tremendously long retirement if you retire at age 60, 30 years of retirement, which means that 50% of these people are going to be living beyond the average lifespan. So that's one of the greatest risks, is that people are not planning that they're going to live a long life. You may or may not, but you better be planning for it. So your money has to last significantly longer than any time before in history. The other area of concern is always inflation. And I understand inflation is very low today, but we know it's not always the case. And just to do a little game or a little exercise on what inflation looks like, I'm looking at some cost of today. Now, Bernard found these numbers. So I'm confident that I know where what restaurant chain I would say that he got these numbers from. But you can see, right, the cost of, French fries and hamburger today but let's take a look at what they would have cost about 50 years ago. So think of a number in your mind for French fries right now. How much do you think they cost 50 years ago? Well, if you said 15 cents, you're amazing, right? Because I know I sure didn't get that right. And how about a hamburger? Well, you know what? It's the same thing. And the fish burger one I found intriguing because, quite frankly, I didn't realize that they had fish burgers 50 years ago, but apparently they did. But a fish burger cost 24 cents, a cheeseburger 20 cents, and a milkshake was 22 cents. So clearly you can see that inflation is a reality. So not only are people living longer, but there is a cost of living that is always increasing. And those are two of the most basic things that I think people need to understand if they're going to have a successful retirement plan, is those are the two key factors that need to be taken into account right away. But let's talk about the ones now that can derail a good retirement plan. And this is, well, imagine if you retired last February and you started to take your retirement income from your life savings, and all of a sudden, last mid-February through mid-March and through the end of March, all of the markets around the world dropped dramatically, 25, 30, 35, 40, 40% plus. And you had to be wondering, if you're in that position, am I going to be okay? So one of the greatest dangers to somebody in retirement is actually poor early performance of your retirement plan. And it's almost irrecoverable in some cases without something that we call diversification. And I'll show you a little bit more about what we call diversification. But here's what I wanted to introduce to you, which I call the world of averages. The law of averages is really what we're talking about. This is a chart that I'm confident that you have seen in many different places. You can see it advertised all over the place, and let's just walk through it. Here's an example, and again, this is advertisement for the most part. Somebody has $100,000, they're age 65, they're having an average rate of return of 5%, and they're also taking an income of 5%, which is a $600 month income. Look what happens. Well, using the law of averages, 5% every year, $600 a month withdrawal, the money will last until age 89. And if you go by, longevity back in 2015, those numbers work. But as you and I both know, nothing stays constant all the time. Interest rates don't stay constant. Bond markets, stock markets, you name it, nothing stays constant each and every year. So when you're looking at the future of your retirement income, you have to add something that most people don't seem to add, which we call a sequence of returns risk. Understand that the sequence of returns will be one of the greatest risks to you having retirement longevity before we even talk about taxation. So let's look at this example. If you can see here, so here in the first year, as an individual, you had a rate of return of 5%, but the next year you achieved a minus 15% rate of return. The following year was a 25% rate of return. Now, this is pretty dramatic, I understand, but the bottom line is that the average rate of return still worked out to be 5%. So if I use the exact same example and I say, okay, here's your $100,000, your 5% average rate of return, but all I've done is thrown in this sequence of events risk, this sequence of returns, where we had a bad second year. All of a sudden, your money will be depleted by age 83, not age 89. That's a dramatic change, and you need to know that, and you need to be able to manage that risk. Well, let's look at it the other way. So let's say here now, right, the first year was 5%, but the following year was 25%. Magnificent. The next year was minus 15. Not great, but you probably feel okay because you had 25% the year before, but your average rate of return is still only 5%. What does that look like? Well, again, when we bring in the sequence of returns, what you find is that your assets are now depleted by age 87, where the simple law of averages said you're fine to age 89. Well, that works until you throw in any kind of variability. I'm going to show you another example of an advertisement that I saw. You may have heard of a company called Fidelity, a very successful company, one of the largest investment companies in the world. And this is an advertisement that they've had. They said, if you have $500,000 and you're retiring at age 65 and you're using a balanced portfolio, which you can see in their case, they call 50%, equities or stocks for growth, and inflation protection, 50% for safety. They call that a balanced portfolio. And if you have that portfolio, it has averaged 5.9% historically. So you're going to take a 5% income per year, but this time we're going to adjust it to inflation. So they've made a good step. They've added inflation in at 2.25%. So you're taking in 5% income that increases each year, and the average rate of return for this portfolio historically has been 5.9%. They say you will be fine. Your money will last to at least age 100. And for most people, if you retire at age 65, that's going to be sustainable. But guess what's missing? The variability, the sequence of events. And so you have to make sure that whoever you're working with is using proper software so that they are measuring all of the variability possibilities so that you know what kind of success you may have out of your retirement. So remember earlier, I demonstrated if you just used a law of averages, you're fine. And then I showed you what sequence of events can do. Well, this is us using our software on the same pattern that they've created and said, well, let's look at what happens with the sequence of events. Let's look at the range of success. Well, the worst case scenario is that you'd run out of money at age 78 because of consecutive negative years before positivity. So a good deep recession, in other words. Or the most positive, there never was a recession and the assets would just continue to grow. The reality is the truth is somewhere in between. But you need to know, is your plan going to be successful based upon the sequence of returns? And it needs to be measured. We call this a probability or Monte Carlo, if you've ever heard any of these terms. So how do we deal with this? Well, we make sure that we use the proper kind of diversification. And by proper diversification, when you're in your earlier years or you're saving money, diversification often means, and think about it yourself, right? Diversification has often meant, right, having money in types of investments or money in different institutions, kind of spread all over the place. But that isn't the type of diversification we're talking about. The type of diversification we're talking about is when you talk about the old adage of don't put all your eggs in one basket. That means if you have one pillar and you only have another one and you have a recession that comes along, now you have that sequence of returns issue inside your portfolio. If you diversify the way we're talking about, which means we have money set aside for short term, we have money set aside for constant income, and then we also have money set aside as an inflation hedge. Now you are diversified. And now, whenever these economic situations come along, then you're not having one of those pillars knocked. Okay? Well, Bernard sort of sent me a question, I can see. Just a moment. It's a good question. Do we have to meet virtually or can we meet in person? Well, the answer to this is both. Of course, following the protocols of today, we are finding most of our meetings are virtual. We are able to have an in-person meeting, but again, I wouldn't put a lot of emphasis on that at this moment. I think we're still a ways out from being able to comfortably do that. But to answer your question is yes, we can do both, but we've become very comfortable with virtual meetings, as have our clients. So that's a great question. Thank you. What I wanted to quickly talk about was fixed income diversification or bonds, because people think of bonds and they think they may, a Government of Canada bond, but diversification is also within a fixed income component. And I'm just going to show you quickly. This chart has a lot going on, but I'll be able to walk through you pretty quickly or with you pretty easily. These are the different colors associated with the different types of bonds that are available. And diversification means owning a little bit of each at different types, because the reality is nobody knows what's going to happen in the fixed income market year to year. So back in 2011, as you can see, long-term Canadian bonds was the best asset you could have in the fixed income category. By 2012, it was medium. By 2013, it was the worst. 2014, it was the best. And if you follow along, you can see the color is moving around all the time, and it is random at best. So therefore, diversification, if you're talking about fixed income, is there also has to be extra diversification within that spectrum as well in order to protect yourself and get away from the sequence of returns risk. It also works the same for stocks. Look at all of these colors. Hey, I call this the jelly bean chart for obvious reasons. But again, the chart actually works the same way. If you look here at all the different colors, these are all different assets all around the world. These are all stocks, well, for the most part, US large cap, global stocks, etc. So if we just pick a color, if we just pick here this Canadian large cap, these are large Canadian companies, banks, etc. In 2011, they were slightly below the middle grade around the world for performance. And as you can see, they sort of hung there, a little bit better here, the worst here, one of the best here. And as you can see, again, bounces all around. There is no clear pattern. So diversification is well beyond just stocks, bonds. It is also within each one of those spectrums. And I just wanted to make sure I relayed that because, again, if we're talking about sequence of returns risk, this is one of the most important elements as well. So when you're planning also for your retirement, thank you, Bernard. Sorry, another quick question. These are easier questions. It says, can I meet and not become your client? Absolutely. Yeah, you can. Whenever we're doing these types of events, you're able to book in, as I'd said with Bernard earlier, he can just throw our calendar link and maybe do that right now. But there is no obligation or cost whatsoever to become a client by any stretch. You may have a very specific example that may be very also easy to answer. If it's beyond the scope of this chat, then the easiest thing to do, again, is just book a 30-minute timeline. We may only take 10 minutes, but I also won't leave you hanging, and I can give you also up to an hour of time, right? Again, no cost or obligation, but that's a very good question, and thank you for bringing that up. That was, yeah, thank you. When we're talking also about retirement, which ties in the sequence of return risk, the longevity, and also inflation, the real question always comes down to how much can I take out? Well, if somebody is using a moderate portfolio and they're taking out an income today of 5% as an example, again, if you're using the law of averages, we know you have no problems. But if we throw in inflation, and more in particular, the sequence of return risk, we find out that you do have some problems. So in the first 10 years, you can see a very light blue, there's really no issues. But if you're going over 20 years of needing that income, there starts to be some risk come in, which means you only got about a 97% probability that it'll be okay. By 30 years, it's down to an 80%. And if you're living longer than that or needing the money, then you're down to about a 64% probability, which I would call starting to get into the danger zone. Or how about though, you're taking a 7% income today? Well, has anybody talked to you about the longevity issue when you bring in the sequence of returns? After 30 years, you virtually have no probability of success. Very important to understand these numbers. These numbers have been taken over 65 years and back tested, and we know it's what works when you bring in the probability of sequence of returns. Okay, before we get to a sample and to a case study, let me do another quick poll. In retirement, I want to live my paycheck. We want my retirement paycheck to live life to the max for the first 10 years, steady income through retirement, or reduce my lifestyle expenses to maximize my estate. Okay, if you could quickly jump in the chat, I'll give you 30 seconds again. Number 1, live life to the max. 2, steady income. Or 3, reduce your lifestyle expense because you want to leave it for the kids. Off you go. So I'm just looking at the chat. I see lots of 2s coming in. Some 1s. Bernard, why don't you throw in what you think? Yeah, awesome. I just wanted to also note that I see some people have raised their hand. I'm not able to get in there. I don't know, Bernard, if you can look, but if you raised your hand, I'm not able to change that feature in this webinar. But if you're able to go into the chat and ask a question, we'll be able to direct it either that way, or I would recommend, like you said, just use our link to our calendar and just book a period of time in there, and we can answer the questions accordingly at that time. So I would say it's been an equal split at this time between number 1s and 2s. So either living life to the max for the first 10 years or steady income Right? Oh, more ones are coming in. Yeah, yeah, just like Bernard, he wants to live life to the max. I see this a lot, and I don't know if this is a pandemic issue or just simply people because they're retiring younger or more active or more healthy, but often they're wanting to do more in their early retirement years and then prepare to reduce some expenses later on. Well, let's get into how we can maximize our retirement paycheck. So we're going to talk a little bit about taxation very, very quickly. So it's very important about how much you make, but like I say, it's also about how much you keep. You may or may not know this, but this is an example in British Columbia. Whether you're incorporated or personal, whether the money can come out of the corporation to you, but the taxation is essentially going to be the same. So if you have $1,000 of investment income coming to you and it's coming from interest sources, if you're in the highest marginal tax rate, 50% of this is going to go to CRA. If you're earning foreign dividends, again, tax exactly the same, 50% is going to go to CRA. Where you things start to become more tax preferred for you is if you have non-registered investments that are earning eligible Canadian corporate dividends. 31% is all you have to pay as tax. Capital gains is only 25%, so it's the most tax preferred. And there's also something called a return of capital. So a well-structured, non-registered investment program, that means non-RSP or tax-free savings account or RIF, but non-registered assets, you can actually have this set up that all of the income is return of capital and is taxed at zero. Again, very efficient, very, very wonderful tool to have. So when people are in their earlier years and when they're saving, the key is, defer, defer, defer. Save as much tax as you can, save as much tax as you can. And then once you retire, some people may say, hey, let's defer the tax again as long as we can. Don't worry about it till later. And others will say, you know what? I want to start leveling this off. I want to start paying some tax today. Take more money out of my RSP or RIF early so that I'm not worried about this large taxation later in life. The reality is the truth lies in between each of those, depending on the circumstance. For some, they may just let it continue to defer. Others, it'll be, let's take as much income as we can now, because it depends not only on your personal circumstance, how many other income sources you have. Are you married? Are you single, right? Do you want to leave a large estate? All of these factors will decide that, as long as you have a sound, effective withdrawal strategy. So let's get right into a sample, an example on this. So these are two clients we worked with about 18 months ago. Their names have changed, obviously, and the pictures just from the internet. But these are two people. The ages were correct, and the plan is correct. So these are two people that were referred to us, Nicole and Sam, in this example. They want to retire in 2022. What I can tell you is actually they're retiring this year because we've been able to accelerate it just because things have turned a little bit better than we first projected. But let's look through their scenario, right? They don't want to have a large reduction in their expense in their retirement. So when they retire, their expenses, they expect them to keep them mostly the same. They currently have a nice home. They have a wonderful cabin as well. And they also have saved about 1.3 million in savings. So they've done well. They've had an inheritance along the way. And if you can see where their assets are, you can see some of their rates of return are varied because in certain cases, they're using very conservative investments like GICs and their RSP, et cetera. I would have some concerns with that if inflation is important because they're not going to be keeping up with inflation over the long run. And also when I'm looking at the TFSA, a lot of people in Canada use TFSAs for emergency purposes or simply like a checking account almost. And I think it's one of the most underutilized investment tools in our country today because it is tax-free income. So anyway, I'll have a little bit more of a discussion around that. Next slide. Here we go. So let's look at their current plan. So they've been working with an advisor before they came to us, and I asked them what their current plan was. And so I was happy to know they had a plan. But here's what the plan was. The plan said, we're going to draw out our RSPs early because we want to spread the tax bite over time. More importantly, to try to protect the estate. So the estate doesn't have a large tax bill at the end. Again, I hear this all the time. What we have to make sure, though, is that if they're taking money out of their RSPs based on any other income, that they don't get into a position where government benefits are being clawed back, like old age security or even some health benefits. Now, Nicole and Sam have one child. His name, well, in this example, we changed it to Al. Now, Al is self-sufficient, but not to the level that Nicole and Sam are. But there is something that they want to do. They're very concerned that if Al gets this cabin later in life, the capital gains is going to be so high, and it's going to really hurt the estate. So they're prepared to give Al the cabin today, take some of their money from their investments, their GICs and their TFSAs, and to pay the taxes on the capital gains today, and then they will just continue to fund the property taxes annually for Al. One of the issues, though, is that Al is in a new relationship, and he's actually gotten engaged at that time, and they had never met this person. So for those of you that have kids, I can just see, I can see you batting your eyes, or you know exactly what I'm thinking. So obviously not a great situation. And again, they're using their tax-free savings accounts for shortfalls. They're in a very high tax bracket, so they don't want to withdraw money from any other source naturally. And that's why they're going to help use that to pay for any capital gains currently. Okay, so that's the current plan that they have in place. Well, I went to our software, and our software uses a lot of artificial intelligence. It is very state of the art. And so I took a look and I said, here, very succinctly, let's take a look at your first year retirement. Now, you've got some healthy expenses. $72,000 of expenses are going to be what we call your fixed expenses. Another almost $40,000 for the fun stuff, right? Meals, travel, those kind of things. And then when I took a look at their income, you can see they've got $55,000 of pension incomes, other CPP, OAS, and then some interest income. Now, when I asked them about the order of withdrawal from their investments, they said that their plan is, like we talked about, RRSPs first, tax-free savings account second, and then the non-registered account third. Okay. Oh, I have another question. Why doesn't my accountant talk to me about this? Well, you know what? The reality is that accountants accountants are doing what they do, which is making sure that your current taxes are current, up to date, helping you do some minor tax planning, but they don't have the software, nor understanding of all of the products are available from a taxation purpose and to fit your mold in order to have a look at your overall life over 10, 20, 30 years. That's what a certified financial planner is for. So we work with our clients, accountants, and lawyers collectively in order to make sure that we put everything together for them. And then it's nice having everybody on the same page, I can tell you. So that's a great question. What strategies then did we come up with to minimize their taxes? Well, it was very simple. The very first thing we talked to them about is, that you can split your pension income. And most of you may know that. So if you're earning pensionable income and you're age 65 plus, you can split your income so that you don't have one person in a higher tax rate, hopefully, than the other. This is something that the CRA brought in, or the government brought in quite a few years ago. We also did some exercise on that. What order should the money come out? And what we found out is the RSPs should not come out first, and I'll prove it to you, right? And then what we also looked at was that they should consider some form of guaranteed income, because there are very few forms of guaranteed income. But instead of using a GIC, which is not only highly taxable and a low rate of return, we wanted to introduce what they call as a small annuity with some guarantee, and it's also very, very tax efficient. Right? Now, the last thing we wanted to do was to talk to them about optimizing their tax-free savings accounts. So because their tax-free savings account is the most effective tool for investment out there, in our opinion, that we wanted to maximize this for growth. So based upon their comfort level, right, realign the tax-free savings accounts and also defer taking money out of the TFSAs as long as possible. Okay, so let's show you what our software would look like. When we put this in and we take a look overall at their plan, and I'll show you how you read this, is that here they were planning to retire in 2023. So 2022, they're working, right? The solid line represents their fixed income investments. The dotted line represents their total needs, which includes taxes. And I saw on the previous screen that there's quite a shortfall, and the shortfall here, so we're showing money coming out of RSPs, TFSAs, and then registered. What we found out is in the last 6-7 years of life, there's a significant shortfall of assets. In other words, it works if you use the law of averages. But when we throw in sequence of returns and inflation, we found out that there's going to be a shortfall of almost $400,000 over the last years of their life. So they either have to adjust how much they want to have as income through their life quite dramatically, or we have to look at different strategies. Well, let's show you what this looks like. So here is the initial plan. Again, using the law of averages, they were going to have a wonderful opportunity to spend as much as they wanted, up to $6 million through their lifetime. They're going to pay about almost $2 million in tax through that period, and their net estate will be a little bit over 2.1 million. Okay. Well, again, when we throw in the sequence of returns and these probabilities into the equation, we found out that the actual probability of success is only 66%, subpar. In other words, it's not going to work. So we wanted to make sure that we're capable in planning for them to be the best that we can. When we also then added in the splitting of pension income, it increased the probability to 67%. Nothing great. But we changed the order of where they're going to get their assets from. So by making them confident to utilize their tax-free savings accounts better and changing the order where the RRSP withdrawal is actually last, not first, what we found is that we actually could increase their lifetime spending by over $500,000, which means we're getting rid of that shortfall that we saw. We've increased their taxes a little bit over their lifetime, 130,000 or so, but we've also increased the estate by about 50%, or sorry, 300,000. The probability is still only at 83%. It's just not high enough, in our opinion. So when I take away the interest risk, and again, using the sequence of returns, and I said, let's buy an annuity rather than the GIC, well, look what happens. The probability goes up to 89%. It gets even better. Let's optimize that tax-free savings account and use it for what is best for you, right? Which is to have growth. Well, look at the big jump in particularly to the net estate. But here's the one that's going to be a shocker. We're at 92%. I think it's good. It's not good enough because we didn't stop here. We said, don't give the cottage to Al today. And the reason is, and this was not from an estate point of view, this was not, or the marriage point of view with the, or potential marriage, which they are married, by the way, now, but the engagement with somebody they hadn't met. It's that taking money out of their savings at this early stage, the opportunity cost of not having that grow over the rest of their lifetime is significantly higher than the capital gains issue that they would pay later. So the last recommendation was, don't give Al the cottage. It would actually, because of that extra cash that they would have, it would increase their overall lifetime spending by $522,000. They would have to pay more tax to get the income, but I think most people would take that trade. And look what happens to the estate. Al is better off by over $1 million. So our clients were able to live their life, right? We changed the order of what they were doing, maximized what they were doing, changed the plan quite dramatically, and we were able to meet all of their goals. So taxation is very important, but it's an overall mixture of how does this work for a successful retirement plan. Okay. I just wanted to talk a little bit about we have a quick question here. I'll just go to the next slide. Yeah, great question. Question is, I have a very personal question. Can we speak privately? Yeah, the chat isn't going to work, obviously, for that. But what I would recommend is just Bernard, if you could just put our calendar link in. I won't say names, obviously, just put our calendar link in and just click on our calendar. You'll see there's a 30-minute time slot. There's an opportunity to also in there say what it is that you'd like to talk about. So if you fill that in, then I'll also have a good general understanding and you can let me know a little bit about your situation. And we can have either a virtual call, a phone call, or an in-person meeting as you like. But I would suggest probably a virtual call or a phone call to begin with. Right. So yeah, thank you. Great question. I'd love to help you, but just book in the calendar and then no problems. Thank you. We work with as you can see, it's very synchronized and it's a holistic financial plan. And the reason for that is because every one of these is interlinked. So if we're talking about like we were for Nicole and Sam, they were wanting to optimize their retirement without question. But in order to do that, we also had to make sure they're managing their cash flow effectively. They're not going to run out of money. That means that they were able to maximize their wealth sharing, which is, again, very important. We also knew that they wanted to give Al the cottage. So as you can see, each one of these is interrelated. And so therefore, we have to get to know our clients on a very detailed level, because if one of these were to change, it changes the others. And if we don't know about it, then we could be having an adverse effect in what we're planning. So that's why we also have to make sure everything is in a tax efficient model all the time. So what do? Well, we explore your current situation. We meet with you, we say, hello, how are you? Understand your goals, understand where you want to go. And then we can help start to develop a comprehensive plan. And if you notice, it's after that, then we will build a customized investment program, because it has to match the plan first. Where are we going? We have to know, and then we can build an investment plan to make it work. Unfortunately, and we don't know why, but in Canada, Canadians, if they have a portfolio, they believe that that is a retirement plan. And I think I've proven to you that's not the case. You have to have the plan first, and then the portfolio will match. Then we implement this, obviously, and we have to be very proactive in monitoring and meeting on a regular basis. So I know I'm going through a lot very quickly, but let's get to a moment of truth. This is something from the Globe and Mail. So if you have a pen or pencil available, just simply get ready to write this down. We're going to go through some questions. It's just yes or no. And let me know what your answers are, or better yet, you know what your answers will be. You hear from your advisor at least once a year, minimum. Yes or no? You get a response to calls and emails within 24 hours, without question. You've talked about other guaranteed retirement options beyond old age security and CPP. Your advisor asks you questions about your life, your goals, your aspirations, so that they truly understand what the ultimate goal is for you. You have a written copy of your financial plan, and it's updated annually. Very important. Or it could even be online today. We have ours now uploaded online for our clients. If you're in a relationship, or both of your partner's views being addressed, they may be different. So it's very important that each person is understood and heard. Your advisor tries to help you improve your financial habits. Are you doing things the right way? Your advisor covers matters beyond investments, like debt, taxes, insurance, estate planning. And as you know, they're all interlinked. I've showed you that. I have a clear understanding of what I have in my portfolio and why. I've maximized all of my income splitting and tax deferral opportunities beyond what your accountant will do. Your advisor has clearly explained the cost of ownership of your investments. You need to know every penny that you pay and why. Your advisor is a certified financial professional. Yes or no? Okay. My advisor understands my tolerance for losing money because we've talked about it. Again, important. You have a current will and power of attorney, and your advisor knows. More importantly, hopefully they've talked to the power of attorney as well and met them. Your advisor is a simplifier. You come out of interactions with greater clarity, which means you learn something at each meeting when you walk out of it. And you're confident that your savings will last through retirement, even with market volatility. So if you answered 14 to 16 of these yes, you likely have a very good advisor. If you answer 10 to 13, there is some room for improvement without question. So you can ask these of your advisor. If you had 7 to 9, yes, it is without question time for a second opinion. And as Rob Carrick from Globe and Mail said, if you have 6 or less, run to a new advisor. But you know what? I really enjoy these questions because this is absolutely integral for somebody to have not only minimize their taxes in retirement, but to have a successful retirement plan for the long run. So we'll throw our calendar link in there and we'll get to some questions in a few moments. But if you do want to meet with us for either 30 minutes, 10 to 30 minutes, or even an hour, again, there's no obligation or cost. But if you have questions and you'd like, you will walk away with a personalized strategy no matter what to help you maximize your retirement. You'll learn my top 3 strategies to reduce your income taxes significantly. You'll also have my 2 strategies to lower the impact of market volatility in your portfolio, not just right now, but also for the future. And I'll help you through understanding how to control any emotional investment decisions. Because if you don't have a fully diversified portfolio and you're not understanding the sequence of returns within your portfolio, it can create a lot of emotion, which can really swing your annual returns by a wide margin and derail a plan. Right? So we got a couple of minutes here. Let's go through and see if we have any questions. Bernard, you got any questions up there? Do you want to throw some in that you've been saving? Appreciate that. Sorry, I'm just reading the questions. I'm recently remarried, and my spouse and I both have RSPs, TFSAs, and non-registered accounts. What tax implications happen to these accounts when one of us were to pass away? Well, that's a large question, I can say. And you know what? This is something that we see a lot of course, second marriages. And then, obviously children, often children from both marriages as well. It's very important that you understand that there's some distinct tax things that need to be worked on in order for that plan to be successful. So it's also part of an estate plan. But you are correct, depending on the structure that you have today, like if you have separate non-registered accounts, you could have probate issues. And again, depending on what your estate plan says, you could have some very unpleasant surprises and cost and tax implications there as well. There are some tools available that CRA allows us to do, prescribed rate loans, et cetera. So I would recommend that you, again, just book a quick meeting on that, because what you have as a situation needs a little bit more clarity. But that's a really great question. Thank you for grabbing that one, Bernard. Okay. And now let's see what the next question says. I have a higher income than my spouse. What are some strategies to reduce my income taxes now and in retirement? Well, if you're not 65 today, you're not able to income split at this time, but that will be coming as you go ahead. Now, it is possible, and I just mentioned the word prescribed rate loan. That is an advantage that you also may have. But if you have a pension, or if you're not maximizing your RSPs or spousal RSPs, these are also things that we should be looking at, which would be starting with what are your ultimate goals, rather, could be just saving income taxes today, but let's look at your overall goals to make sure that we can not only save you income taxes today, but also what does it look like through the different stages of retirement? Because what we don't want to have is a massive jump in income taxes later in life. And at the same time, we don't want to underlive today. So looks like we're going to be running out of time. But, Bernard, again, please just make sure that calendar link is available. Because I can see that there's lots of questions coming through. I just don't have time for them. Just click on the link. I can go through them with you. One of the things that I know that when we're working with all of our clients, it isn't about how much money you have, but it's what you get from it. And it's also more importantly is that I keep coming across, and I don't know why, but lately I keep coming across a lot of people that are what I call underliving. They have a lot more assets or ability to have income than they think, but they don't know what the future looks like, from a statistical point of view, 5, 10, 15 years out. So they're underliving today when they don't need to. So, if that's an issue for you, again, just book some time, because I'll be able to give you some strategies around that really quite quickly. So I wanted to thank you very much for attending, and I hope everybody has a wonderful day today. The weather, well, it might get warmer. I can see it's a little bit sunny at the moment, but it has stopped snowing. I wish you all the best, and thank you for your time.